Hello again, it's Suzy from MEF. Welcome to this session this afternoon. So we have an introductory session with Kaleido Intelligence to start with. And I'm really happy to introduce Steffen Sorrell. Steffen, welcome. Sorry for keep you waiting in the backstage.
Yeah,
it's amazing how data can keep you talking. I mean, I guess you're familiar with this.
I'm very familiar with this. If I run over, just start waving your arms or coughing or something like that.
So just as an introduction on this topic, we have several topics to talk about this afternoon. We have roaming, IoT, network APIs, all these which are either, traditional things that we've been talking about in this particular conference, but also things that we see appearing in the market and that are raising questions, at least from our membership base and our audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I really thought it would be a very good idea for us to have an introductory session and give insight into what is going on in the market with regards to roaming, travel eSIM, IoT connectivity, and network APIs, and how, obviously Kaleido Intelligence came to mind as well. So it's a great pleasure to have you here. I know you have a nice set of slides to go through. I'll stay with you for that. I'll have probably a few questions to ask throughout the session, but I'm really happy to have you and please feel free to start and go through what you've prepared for us. Thank you.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having us on again. It's always a pleasure to present for MEF. Just a quick, let's say, introductory session on some of the really very interesting topics that's going on in Wholesale. So myself, I'm Chief of Research at Kaleido Intelligence, mainly in charge of the IoT side, but obviously today also looking at roaming on a more broad sense, as well as things like network APIs and travel eSIM. Let me see if I can, there we go. I suppose to kick off, a good start is kind of where are we within the roaming ecosystem. So we do some surveys throughout the year regularly towards the wholesale community, as well as other areas such as enterprises, consumers. So I've got a couple of interesting stats here. So from the operator perspective, inbound roaming traffic is up 58% versus 2019 on average. However, when you look at the travel volumes, we're really only just entering a post-pandemic era. So 2024 is going to be the year where travel trip volume, let's say, finally exceeds 2019 levels. So actually, people are only just getting back to where they were, but a real appetite for data within the market. Some of the other things that are happening is, like, we like to look into what's going on behind the scenes, let's say, within the wholesale community. What are their priorities, things like that. I think an interesting thing is, when we look at the chart on the right-hand side, top 5 primary technical requirements, VoLTE is still one of those. Obviously, VoLTE has been a critical issue with network sunsets happening, some infamous outages in terms of voice services in the US a year or two ago, and created a bit of a panic, perhaps. So VoLTE really has been a massive priority for operators over the past couple of years or so. And I feel somehow that perhaps has taken over some of the potential areas of opportunity beyond voice services. So, for example, when we look back at the survey results, on the bottom stats there, 33% of that mobile operator survey cohort still remains undecided on 5G standalone plans. So, it's been quite a few years since the launch of the first 5G networks, but we're really still not quite there. It's a bit of a word map on the bottom left-hand side there. I mean, just some of the issues that keep arising, some of which we'll cover today. Let me move slides. So I suppose, one of the questions is, why haven't we moved towards proper 5G within roaming yet? So, on a non-standalone availability perspective, it's actually quite broadly available, but of course that's using LTE core. However, on the other hand, it's not really, let's say, true 5G roaming until you enable 5G core and develop the roaming agreements around it. I think there are some key issues why that hasn't taken place yet. There are no commercial agreements for 5G standalone roaming yet. VoLTE is one of those reasons. We talked about that. But also, unfortunately, when the standard was developed, I feel there was perhaps not enough thought on how the commercial models for roaming work. So 5G is, of course, supposed to be end-to-end secure. But when you look at roaming and the services surrounding that, like, let's give welcome SMS, for example, you need intermediaries along the chain. And intermediaries need to read those signaling messages. That breaks the end-to-end secure standard of 5G. So there's a group called 5G Mobile Roaming Revisited, who are tasked with fitting the square peg in a round hole to solve that issue, and have really been discussing it for quite some time. So there's some real challenges to make sure that 5G actually lives up to its secure promise. So it's one of the reasons why we haven't had standalone 5G yet. On the other hand, if you look at monetization, 5G monetization requires the enablement of billing and charging evolution, so BCE, which has really been slow to take off, again, mainly because of resource constraints, and unwillingness to shift away from TAP, transferred account procedures, for example. And as we can see, again, from some survey results there, some key issues in terms of, better education is needed in the market. And also, other players, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. Look at the second result there, facing competitive disadvantages for not having deployed DCE would be one thing to significantly accelerate adoption. So quite interesting there. But without BCE, you cannot monetize true 5G roaming connectivity. And it also means that there are limitations when you look towards industries like IoT and specialized use cases there as well, which we'll look at in a bit. So more broadly, while roaming is, from a travel perspective, is certainly on the way to recovery, the industry still is lagging a little bit on where it needs to develop and address new opportunities. So quite an interesting juxtaposition, I think. Of course, travel eSIM is a very interesting topic. I believe there's a panel later which will look quite deeply into this, but just to give you some quick stats. So again, looking towards the operator community, how do you feel about travel eSIM? Does it keep you awake at night? Does it present itself as an opportunity? I think, as we can see there, that it's pretty much a 50-50 split on how operators are seeing it. Some see it as a positive, others see it as something that is really a threat to their incumbent business. And of course, when you look back, the roaming industry has been around for many years and quite comfortably in a niche of selling direct roaming agreements, sponsored roaming agreements, and so on. And despite the fact that travel SIMs have been around, they really haven't threatened the status quo. The fact that travel eSIM is kind of e-commerce based, fully digital, that means it's much simpler to leverage the type of technologies. So when we look ahead, we expect to see around $10 billion in retail spend surrounding travel eSIM by 2028. So up from nearly nothing a couple of years ago. So it's quite significant growth. I mean, you have a little chart there on the bottom right highlighting some of the major players for travel eSIM. Just to note, that's an older chart. We'll be releasing updated info via various white papers and reports covering this sector this year. So have a look, keep an eye out for that. So we looked quickly on how does the community view travel eSIM, but why is it such a big thing? So for example, I looked up how much I need to spend in Canada when I'm roaming. So my mobile operator charges me £6 per megabyte. For me, I'm not that rich. It's a no-no. I'm going straight to travel eSIM for that one. Also, there seems to be, perhaps among more entrenched members of the wholesale community, that roamers within Roam Like at Home regions simply don't use travel eSIM because for the vast amount of time they're only traveling within those specific regions. But not true. For example, survey last year on travel eSIM, 20% of North Americans used travel eSIM for their connectivity. The figure was actually even higher within the EU, which is, of course, the infamous region for Roam Like at Home connectivity. As soon as you move out of that footprint, that's where travel eSIM comes into play, and people do go long-haul trips, and so it is certainly there. So when we look at the market growth, so the bottom chart, there's 16 times growth over the next 5 years in terms of subscription packages to travel eSIM. So tremendous growth. When you look at the opportunity, so by 2028, nearly 4 billion smartphones will be eSIM enabled, capable of using travel eSIM. What does it mean for operators? What does it mean for wholesale teams? So, of course, right now you have a significant number of travelers who simply turn off cellular data, perhaps because they're being charged £6 per megabyte, perhaps because they prefer to use Wi-Fi or something like that. But travel eSIM enables you to address that silent roam opportunity, whether it's through pricing, obviously that is the major one, but also through things like coverage available, quality of service. These are things that also interest purchasers of travel eSIM. So what does this mean? It means the incremental revenue opportunities for mobile operators. It's not necessarily fully a cannibalization of existing roaming revenues. There are new sales channel opportunities. For example, let's look at Revolut just now offering its members travel eSIM connectivity. There is an opportunity for wholesalers to get involved with this, add incremental revenues, and keep their existing brand, because it's at the end of the day, travelers prefer to use what works the easiest. So if the roaming is good enough, if the price is good enough, they will stick with traditional roaming, but they will look for alternatives if that is not the case. Moving to IoT, just a little conscious of the time. So of course, we have a little data slide here, nearly 1 billion roaming, or just about 1 billion inbound roaming connections by the end of 2028. So roaming continues to be fundamental to support IoT connectivity, and it's going to see healthy growth over the incoming years. However, it's not without its pain points. So as I mentioned, I do a lot of surveys. One of those is towards the enterprise community. So last year, 1,000 enterprises were surveyed. We asked them, how do you address your international connectivity? You can see there from the chart, virtually everyone is going to multiple different providers to support those international deployments. So this introduces a level of fragmentation, challenges, different platforms, different SLAs, different billing relationships. It's all a bit of a headache. So things that need to be solved. We are seeing some interesting strategies to overcome this. On the one hand, kind of abstraction layers between platforms being developed. Of course, the IoT MVNO community, whether they like to be called that or not, are also increasing their reach and capabilities through wholesale partnerships, and thus being the aggregators of multiple different connectivity options, help solve the single pane of glass issue a little step at a time. However, there are still some key challenges. Security is one, regulation is one, optimization is one. So on the security side, seeing things such as the R155 regulation for automotive, big impact. on how OEMs need to report on compliance and address security. And connectivity service providers are most certainly impacted by this, being part of that value chain. There's other security regulations that are becoming increasingly important. We saw the new NIST framework being released earlier this year, for example. So some guidelines there to help all companies develop cybersecurity best practices. GDPR compliance, of course, is a big thing. In other areas, there's regulation in relation to roaming itself. So permanent roaming is things that we often talk about. And you can see a little chart there. I'm not going to go through it all, but a significant number of countries where it's challenging to address inbound roaming on a permanent basis. And don't forget that most IoT connections are actually roaming permanently. A lot of connections are static. So they're there in the country and they live there until end of life. Other areas are things like the radio technologies. So LTE-M, NB-IoT, the roaming agreements. Domestically, the coverage may well be getting there, but on a roaming basis, we're still a long way from where we need to be. And that's bringing other things into play. Customers asking, should I be using Cat 1 bis instead? Is it easier to do this? How long is support for my LTE-M or NB-IoT connectivity going to be supported for, considering we're now moving to 5G and possibly even 6G? On the optimization side, enterprises are becoming more sophisticated. So, they do want things like low latency connectivity. Can operators address that through local breakout? There's a problem there with trust between operators. So we're starting to see, things like regional breakout being developed among IPXs, MVNOs, and so on, to address those low latency requirements. So quite an interesting space to look at there. Just to close it out, I guess, for the last few minutes. Open Gateway is, I was actually surprised. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago and I was talking about Open Gateway, and actually very few, this was a Wholesale event, by the way, very few actually knew what Open Gateway was. So I thought I'd just add in this slide. So really the aim of it is to develop a set of common APIs for mobile network access, network functions access. So a common one is, can I find the location of this mobile device? Now you have those features today in mobile networks, of course. When I look at IoT connectivity management platforms, often there's APIs to extract the location for the customer. But the problem is that these APIs are varied. So there's a heavy level of fragmentation extant in today's ecosystem. So the idea is to develop common APIs to reduce that fragmentation. And as time goes on, let's monetize those APIs and make some money off them. So that's really the key idea of it. Where we are today is around 100 network APIs launched between MNO groups and MNOs within various countries. There's actually very good adoption within the community. However, when we look back towards history, this is not the first time that things like APIs have tried to be addressed by the operator community or these types of similar initiatives. So it really needs to have a different approach this time around. Really look towards the developers themselves. What are their needs? Try to engage them. I really think that, just to close it out quickly, if this is to succeed, I think, the telco enterprise partnership initiatives is fundamental to driving growth, because that is something that hasn't happened before. And even then, it needs to be a long tail view of the market. As you can see there from our forecasts there, it's going to be some time before we see significant revenues from here. So you cannot take a 6-month view moving forward for this type of thing. It has to be a long-term view. If it's not that and you're not developing the partnerships, we won't ever see these APIs take off. Yeah, that's just so
So that's a great way of ending your presentation. Sorry, I should have been here, but that's the sometimes the unexpected challenges of a live session. But that's okay, because you went through the whole thing, and we squeezed the delay we have. So you see that every cloud has a silver lining. Thank you very much, Steffen, for being our host today, and going through these insights. So there's a lot happening, as we can see. 5G SA still not there. BC is taking time to take off. I'm sure we'll be talking about travel eSIM and the impact on the roaming industry in a minute with Gilbert and his team. And Nastia will take us through some of the developments in IoT connectivity and certainly speak about permanent roaming, I'm sure. We'll finish with the day with Doug, and Doug will also cover network APIs. It's good to have those insights from you. I think it's good to bring some awareness as to where we stand with this. Maybe Wholesale is a bit further down the line, but it's really good to have those insights. So from my side, a big thank you from MEF, Steffen. Thank you for joining us.
Yep, thank you.
And we'll speak again soon, I'm sure. Thank you.